You know security is hard, so let's assume we're probably gonna get pwned by noon. But if we all start to get the basics right, we might not fully get pwned until tonight.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the 7-Minute Security Podcast. My name is Brian Johnson, and I'm really excited today to be going through the Billy Madison CTF, a vulnerable VM that was built for vulnhub.com. But I'm going to be totally honest with you, there are way better walkthroughs and blog articles out there about this. So I want to do kind of a hybrid approach. I want to go through pwning the VM while at the same time kind of lifting back the curtain and giving you a behind-the-scenes look on how some of the trolls and traps and challenges were set, so that maybe this will inspire you, give you some ideas for building your own vulnerable machine. So as you can see up on the right, I've got Billy Madison, and up on the left is my Kali attacking box. So let's just jump right in. All right, so one of the first things I want to show you is the rc.local file. Now, anything you put in the rc.local file gets run when the system starts. So I have all these different shell scripts set to fire upon boot. One of those is ebd.sh, and all this really does is clean out the folder called Weasel Laugh, which is used for receiving inbound email, and then copies this ebd.txt back into the root of that folder. Also, this Weasel Laugh folder is shared out via SMB, and it is shared out in an intentionally insecure way. So if we look for smb.conf and open that up, what I did here is really model this weak SMB configuration after a blog article that I found that I'll pull up here. And really, the idea, what I wanted to happen was that I wanted you to be able to see that SMB service open, be able to connect to it, just as guest or with no creds, and then see that ebd.txt and go, okay, Eric's backdoor is closed. Well, I'm probably going to have to figure out how to open that at some point. So, it was a little bit of a tease or a troll, but a functional one. All right, let's check out the cleanup.sh file. That was really just to clean out the bash histories so that I didn't leave any obvious hints or key commands for you to find later. In the same way, kind of, the fwconfig.sh just flushes out the IP tables, sets up ports, only the ports I want listening, to be running upon startup, because later in the VM you have to force some of the ports open. All right, the email.sh, that's a pretty easy one. That is a pretty simple one-liner script that opens a fake SMTP server called fake SMTP. So all you have to really have is an IP to run it on, a port that you pick, and then a destination folder for inbound emails to land in. So as you can see here, I've set my inbound mails to dump into that Weasel Laugh folder we looked at a little bit ago. Okay, next up is the wp.sh script. Now, what this does is it uses some scripting to determine the local IP and then run a fake WordPress site on that IP with a port of your choosing. Now, where I found this little gem is it was part of the Active Defense Harbinger distribution project, which is just overflowing with goodies, tools that you would normally use for active defense, but I found just play wonderfully in a vulnerable VM configuration. So inside the tools folder are little subfolders for each tool, and then at the root is usually a markdown file that will help you get up and running. So in this case, this tool is called WordPot, and it's simple. Just run the Python script, choose a port, and you're off and running. So I know it tripped up a lot of people, and they were red hot mad about it, but hey, that's don't hate the player, hate the game. All right, let's open up the ftp.sh, and that just opens up an open source FTP solution called Colorado FTP, which I'll make sure the link is in the show notes if you want to tinker with that. let's see, what else haven't we peeked at? Oh, let's see the telnet.sh. This one is kind of fun. So it's another honeypot, and this comes from the ADHD distribution. But the idea here is that you set up a listening port of your choosing, and if people try to connect to it, they get banned from the system. So what they're showing in the README here is you could set up an RDP listener port, and then as soon as someone makes that connection, bam, if you look in IP tables, they are no longer invited to connect to the machine, which is pretty cool. And probably my favorite script is the ssh.sh, which runs a Python script called rubber glue. And rubber glue is part of the ADHD distribution. And it's so clever. It really does, you know, that whole I'm rubber, you're glue, anything you say bounces off me, sticks to you. That's the concept of this script. So I set it up to listen on SSH, and then when you try to make an SSH connection to the box, it connects back to you on SSH. So in some instances, people were SSHing to themselves, which is just good, clean, frustrating fun. All right, let's take a quick look at those IP tables rules one more time, just to see that they are indeed at the default configuration and not blocking any IPs. And then let's do our Nmap scan to see what initially shows up on our results, and then we'll kind of start going through the steps of pwning the VM. And since we just talked about IP tables, let's just see that IP tables ban in action. So if I attempt a telnet connection to the host, I will get a mockery message from Eric Gordon. But also at the same time, if we go here and look at all the IP tables again, we'll see that my IP is now in the list. Now the telnet message is your first hint in the VM. It's a message from Eric saying he doesn't use rotten passwords like blah blah blah. And I capitalized rot in hopes to tip you off that this was a rot13 password. So if we just go to rot13.com and paste that in, we will get a output of exmenuating, which is a subfolder off of the web root that takes you to the next hint about how Eric's going to try to send a phishing email to Veronica in hopes to get a shell on the machine and do some nasty stuff. Also at the bottom of the screen is a log that will show you if your machine is banned. I don't know if we went through how that piece was put together, so let me show you the cron jobs for root. So one of the scripts that runs every minute is called checkban.sh. And what that does is it parses through the IP tables list, and if there are any banned IPs, it inserts it into the currently banned hosts.txt. Otherwise, it'll just show no IPs in the list. And actually, you'll see on the left there, I gave a warning about how if your IP is in this list, you need to reboot Billy Madison to clear out the IP tables. Really what I was running into is some weird VirtualBox problems, and when we get to port knocking and some of the other things further along in the VM, things just weren't working right. So I'm just kind of forced people to reboot the VM to get all the IP table bans lifted. So once the machine boots, if we refresh the currently banned host.txt, we'll see it's nice and empty. Okay, if we head back to Eric's notes, we will find the next hint for moving forward in the VM. Eric talks about some correspondence between he and Veronica and how he captured or .captured the whole thing in this folder, so in the exmenuating folder for later lulls. And he's got Veronica somewhere in the name of the cap file. And he also mentions that she rocks, and that was my perhaps pathetic hint at telling you to use the rocku.txt list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grep anything with Veronica out of the rocku.txt list and make my own custom list that I'm just going to call v.txt. And then I'm going to use dirbuster to brute find that cap file. So My base URL is just going to be http:// the IP of the machine. I'm not going to worry about forcing directories, just files. And I'm going to start inside the exmenuating folder. And I'm not going to look for PHP files, I'm going to look for cap files. And then I'm going to use the word list that I just made, called v.txt, and fire this bad boy off. And it should run pretty quick. And then under our results, look at that. We've got a winner. So I'm just going to wget that for later. Okay, now comes the part where we want to pick apart this cap file a little bit and find the interesting data within. And there's lots of ways you can do this. There's several open source tools. You can use Wireshark. But my favorite solution is a script I'm going to show you called mail.sh. And Twitter user Ben R gave me this, which I'll make sure the link is here in the show notes. But it's just a nice little script that finds all the streams and then parses them out into individual cap files. So let me just move the cap files, the cap file and the shell script into streams, and then I'm going to run this and show you that now what we will see is a bunch of individual sequentially numbered streams. So now we can just cat these and kind of follow the email correspondence between Veronica and Eric. So Eric basically fishes Veronica, and she has some issues running the file, so she tells him to connect via FTP, which will only open if he connects with the Spanish Armada combo. And this is a link to the video. It's a part of the movie where Veronica and Billy are studying, and he's trying to guess what year the Spanish Armada was in, and he rattles off a bunch of numbers, which are port numbers that you must use. So you need to do port knocking on the VM to open up FTP. So here's kind of what it looks like if you use Nmap to do the port knocking. So let's just do a quick Nmap test to port 21, and we'll see that it is at current closed. And then if we run the knock.sh script, and then if we try our Nmap again, it's now open. Cool. All right, let's take a look at some of these stream files again and keep moving forward on getting this machine back under our control. Stream 2 will reveal that we've got some FTP credentials we can use. Username Eric and password Eric doesn't drink his own pee. Let's also look at number 3. Okay, sounds like Eric's confirming he's got the FTP open and has uploaded some files for Veronica to run, which in turn are malicious. So she's clicked a link and now the machine is under Eric's control. So let's get in with his credentials of Eric, and Eric doesn't drink his own pee. Take a look at what's inside of here. So there is some baiting here, some trolling, in that those numbered files are just exploits that you can search on exploit.db. They are exploits that will not work on the machine, but they're supposed to kind of show that Eric was attempting to do some privilege escalation by uploading those files. Anyway, the .notes file does have something valuable inside of it. It talks about an SSH backdoor that Eric can open if he sends an email through the system saying my kid will be a something something. And this is another direct reference to the movie where Billy says, "Oh, feel those kicks, he's going to be a soccer player." He is. He is. So once Eric does that, the secret port will be open, and then he can connect with his Wi-Fi password, which he doesn't know, but as the hint says here, that's highlighted, it might be in Veronica's folder. So this one is a chance for us to brute force Veronica's password using the same v.txt word list we created before. Because it seems that Veronica likes to use passwords that contain her name, because she's just kind of into herself like that. So if we let that guy run for a while, we will eventually get a hit way down the list. Okay, so now we can FTP in with Veronica's account. And inside this account, we're going to see an email from Billy, and we're also going to see a .cap file there. Now, you can just pull the email file with just get, but if you try to get the cap file just as is right now, it will be corrupt on your system. And that is because you need to change the FTP to binary mode with the bin command. Then when you pull the file down, it'll be intact. This tripped up a lot of people, and I wish I could say I set that trap for you intentionally, but I didn't. It probably ended up being the most frustrating thing of the VM for a lot of people. Okay, so inside the email to Billy, he talks about how he went over to Eric's to try to crack the Wi-Fi. He wasn't successful, but he got a start. So that tells us, okay, we've got the cap file with the handshake. Now we need to crack it. How do we do that? Again, many ways to do it. My personal preference is to use the AirCrack suite. So I'm just going to run this command here against the rocku.txt. And eventually we will land upon a password of Trisket star. So we know Eric's credentials. Now we need to get that backdoor open. So I am going to use the swax command to craft an email that'll go through the system with the keywords we need. So there's my subject line of "My kid will be a soccer player." So I'm going to kick this off. And now I should be able to SSH in with Eric's credentials on port 1974, which you will have found if you did an Nmap scan after sending this email. I'm just trying to kind of speed things along in the interest of time. All right, inside Eric's folder is a y1974.txt, as in y port 1974. Well, this link will take you to a movie that unfortunately, yeah, it is down. But it was a direct reference from the movie where Norm Macdonald is talking to Billy and his friend and asking them whether they would rather have relations with Meg Ryan or Jack Nicholson. And Billy's response is, Jack Nicholson now or 1974? So anyway, that's why I stuck the hidden backdoor on port 1974. All right, anyway, if we poke around the system, we will find one juicy target. It's a root folder called private, which Eric has no permissions to get into. So normally in cases like these, when I'm on a vulnerable VM and I have a limited privilege account, I go to Got.Milk's privilege escalation page and I run through all the different file searches that will look for, misconfigured services, files, folders, that kind of thing. And this particular one that I'm going to paste in comes in very handy on this particular VM. If you kind of look through some of the results that come out of this find command, you will see that one of these things is not like the other, and that is this file here, the donpcgd. Now, if you Google for donpcgd, you might not find much, but if you remember from the hint I tried to drop you, Eric mentioned that his exploit was installed all backwards. So again, that was my perhaps pathetic attempt at a hint to tell you to flip the letters around, and maybe you'll have a more fruitful search. And that search might lead you to this great write-up all about the vulnerability, and authored by the researcher who found it. His name is Larry Cashdollar, which, on a side note, is a freaking sweet name. It's like a comic book superhero name or a high-powered attorney's name or something. This exploit is also over on ExploitDB, and at the bottom of that article is some proof of concept code, which we're just going to copy out here, and I'm going to modify for our purposes. So what this essentially does is creates a cron job that will run and do whatever action you want, but with escalated privileges. So I'm going to make a script called x.sh in the /temp folder, and I'm going to modify this to not change permissions on etc shadow, but give us full permissions to the /private folder. And then I'm also going to go in and modify, you know how we have the spelling of the exploit backwards? I'm going to go ahead and adjust the shell script to match that spelling so that, you know, the script actually runs. It's details, right? It's the little things that can trip us up. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see if our script runs. All right, it looks like it does. So let's check /etc/cron.hourly. Make sure our rootme file is in there and that it contains what we expect, and it does. So it's going to attempt to chmod 777 to private. Let's verify that currently we have no access to private, which we do not. So now we need to wait up to 1 hour for the cron job to actually fire. But through the magic of cinematography, we are going to make some time pass, and now let's look at those permissions again. And look at that! We now have wide open access to /private, which is swell. Alright, so inside the hint.txt, there's a message from Eric saying that the file called bowel movement can be cracked, but he always forgets the password, and so we need to go to the Billy Madison wiki page as it may contain the password we need. So what I was looking for you to do here is essentially take all the text from this page and then build a word list off of it. There are many ways to do that. I kind of like using a modified cat command to pull all the words into a list with one word per line. So first I'm just going to paste the whole kit and caboodle in here. We'll save that out, and then I'm going to show you this modified cat command. Whoops, that went a little bit too fast. Here's the cat command I'm going to use to give me all the uniques. And then let's also pipe that out to a file for later brute use. Alright, so to do any brute forcing of the bowel movement file, I've got to get it off of that server. So I'm just going to use scp for that, and the command I'm showing you here is just to basically connect on port 1974 and do a recursive copy of the /private folder using Eric's credentials. So there we go. I just slurped everything down. I've got my whole private folder to mess around with. Now, one step I'm going to skip over a little bit here is how you would discover that the bowel movement file is a TrueCrypt file. I just gave a subtle, and again, it might have been a pathetic hint, but in that hint.txt, Eric talks about how the file truly cracks him up. That was my pointer to say, hey, this is a TrueCrypt file. I got a few questions on that, but I also got several folks just saying, hey, I didn't get the hint, but I just brute tried a whole bunch of other tools and found one that worked. So one thing I'm showing you here, though, is that my TrueCrypt, which is Kali's kind of built-in tool to crack TrueCrypt volumes, the one built-in was version 3.0, and for whatever reason, my repositories weren't updating it. So I went to the source and built it. I built the latest, which is version 3.6. So once we run that, we'll see the format is run TrueCrypt, tac t, name of the file, space tac w, and then the word list of your choice. And with that configuration, it shouldn't take us long to strike gold. Now from here, there are many ways to actually get that TrueCrypt file open. What I'm showing you here is one way to do it, and that is with the VeraCrypt tool. Pretty straightforward. You just download the compressed file, you open it up, and then I'm just going to take out the one that matches my system. And then you can just run the installer, do the old next, finish kind of deal, and then VeraCrypt will be ready for you to run from the command line. And then once the tool is popped up, just choose the encrypted container. And then a place to mount it. Really any slot should do. And then I'm going to click the box for TrueCrypt mode, type in our password, and there we go. The container is now mounted. So we can go in Terminal or in the File Explorer And here we go. We've got a secret.zip, which that was kind of one more troll just to make you go, oh no, not another thing to brute force. But no, I tried to make it easy on you. And there are your two finishing files. We've got a little essay from Billy on the Industrial Revolution, and our theend.txt, which marks the end of your journey. Well, I hope this video met the two goals I set out to accomplish. One was just to give you a walkthrough of Pwning the Billy Madison VM from start to finish, but also to give you that peek under the hood to see how some of these pieces are set in place, to make the vulnerable machine work without allowing shortcuts for people to skip ahead and pwn it early. If you go to 7ms.us and you look at the show notes for today's episode, which is 235, I've got even more background information there, including kind of some of the commands I ran to install the OS, install some of the fundamental tools, so that this VM behaves correctly and stays as stable as it can. So that's all I've got for you today. Thanks so much for watching and listening, and my contact information will follow shortly. If I can be of any help or encouragement to you, that's what this is all about. So have a blessed week, and hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye. You've been watching or listening to an episode of 7 Minute Security, a weekly podcast focusing on IT and information security topics, such as penetration testing, network configuration, virtualization, and career advice. For more information, visit www.7ms.us.